I've been a musician for about 40 years, and during that time I've played classical guitar and electric guitar in a number of bands and different groups. Then about 5 years ago I developed arthritis in my thumbs and then in my fingers, and I can no longer practice. And practicing, especially in classical guitar, is critical in being able to perform. So I figured that there must be some other creative way I can express myself. So I shelved the classical guitar and I started writing. Now at the beginning I hadn't intended to write a book. I was just writing these little vignettes, these stories, as well as the occasional poem. And then about 3 years ago I said, wow, maybe I could actually write a book. It covers just the parts of my life to do with let's say, the spiritual journey, which does actually include childhood, adolescence, my time at university, relationships, sex and relationships. But it's not an autobiography. So I only include the details of the events that I think contribute to this spiritual journey. Confessions is a classic word people use for when you're revealing something that is not necessarily hunky-dory. It's got that element of surprise, maybe, really revealing what's gone on in your own life. So that's the confessions bit. The maverick, maverick means a person who doesn't or is unable to just go along with what others do. So he takes a stance, an individual, which of course we all are anyway. But that highlights the sense that I don't follow any particular spiritual pattern anymore. And the post-spiritual, actually I got that from a friend of mine who coined it. And it indicates that I've been through a lot of processes and communities that take on that sense or that title, spirituality. It's a spiritual path. And I feel like I've come out the other end where there's nothing spiritual about my life in that sense. There's nothing definitive about it that I could say it's spiritual and other things aren't spiritual. So the first person I came across that showed me something that might be termed spiritual was a person called Darfree John. That's what he was called many years ago when I came across him. He now has taken on the name Adi Da, although he did pass away a few years ago. It was when I read his books, especially one called Method of the Siddhas, that I got to see myself in a way that I never have before. It just showed me that there was so much beyond my awareness and how I was relating to people. And it also showed me that there was a divine, the divine. It wasn't in the Judeo-Christian form, where there's a bearded man in the sky who is looking down on us and determining who does right, who does wrong, and punishment, all that. But it was clear that there was something beyond just how I was living my life and what I thought I needed to do to become happy. And through him, I learned that there was actually nothing I could do to become happy, that happy was an inherent quality. It wasn't something that I could get through the accumulation of things, goods, cars, that's career, but even the accumulation of clever thoughts, even that had to go. So he was the greatest influence on me, and I was a devotee of his for about 10 years, or a formal devotee for 10 years. And I left the community. The community is called Adi Dham, and I left about 10 years ago. And now I'm a post-spiritual maverick. I don't adhere to any particular way. I don't have a guru. I don't even refer to others, or most of the time I don't refer to others, only if I feel it enhances my communication with people. The closest writings that I've come across that are as similar to what I understand would have to be a guy called Jed McKenna. Now, he's an interesting person because no one knows who he is. He has written a trilogy of books, beginning with one called Spiritual Enlightenment, The Damnedest Thing, and no one knows who he won't come up with it. He won't reveal who he is. So he publishes his book through a publisher that won't say who he is or where he lives or anything about him. So all you get is what he writes in these books. And I find that his communication is the closest to what I would communicate and what I'm trying to do in my book. There are others as well. He refers to a fellow called U.G. Krishnamurti, who's an Indian person, not alive anymore. And he also has a fantastic critique about people who become devotees of gurus and the foibles underlying people's approach to gurus. And the third one, which is really different, is a fellow called Gary Crowley, who wrote a book, Past the Jelly, Tales of Ordinary Enlightenment. And that touches me in the heart in a way that Jed McKenna and U.G. Krishnamurti doesn't. His book is just really ordinary and full of this love, this presence that he brings to his daily life. And in fact, that particular book is just one day of his life. And yet it's just so lovely. And so those are the three people that have had the greatest effect on me since my time with Adi Da. Well, the theme of the book is all beliefs are divisory. All beliefs are arbitrary and divisory. So I'm trying to show that the belief in anything immediately sets up a difference. So you believe one thing, someone else believes another thing. There is even an internal conflict as soon as you say, I believe something. So let's say, for instance, you claim to believe in God, the big one. Then immediately there is the sense that you don't believe in God. So there is this inner conflict. And most traditional religions pursue this. So for instance, in the Christian tradition, you would have this sense that there's good and there's bad. And so people are trying to foster the good and avoid the bad. So there's an internal division. Likewise, with belief in anything, it sets up this internal division, which is a constant battle to have one prevail over the other. So my book is trying to show that belief in anything not only creates an internal division, but then it also creates divisions amongst people and nations. I'm trying to write a book that reveals who I am, how I see things. So if someone reads it, the biggest thrill for me would be if that person got to know me. Say, gee, I've read this book. Wow, I really know who this character, Eddie Blatt, is. Even though Eddie Blatt doesn't exist. But the character that's coming through me is what I would hope he gets a good sense of. And, of course, there would also be, I would like to see this understanding that all beliefs are divisory. If they really get a sense of that through the stories in my book, because I hardly at all present the book in dharmic form or as a teaching. It's not a teaching. It's my life, is how that understanding unfolds in my life through the events. There are vignettes, these little vignettes between myself and other people. I also write poetry, a little more ecstatic, and there are some short stories as well, and even essays. I used to be a research scientist, and I'm very familiar with the what's required to write essays. So that's included in the book as well. So a person who reads it will get a very broad sense of who I am.